Good evening, everyone. We move on to Zechariah chapter 9. This continues on from chapter 8, where we had the goyim going after a Jewish person to say that uh, we heard that God is with you all. Now that would be the ending of chapter 8. As it continues in chapter 9, this whole chapter is one prophecy, one chunk, and they are not split out into what we have been covering in chapters 7 and 8, where there are little bits and pieces coming out, and each of them may stand alone. Now, chapter 9 stands alone on its own, the entire 17 verses. It begins this way: the pronouncement of the word of the Lord. And the word pronouncement here really means prophecy. And I would venture to set our expectation of the issues that God is going to bring forth would be something of the future. Now, future prophecy, however far in the future, which we can't tell, at the time of Zechariah, the details have to be very much of the day, because it can't be telling details that the audience doesn't understand or will find it very strange. For example, it won't be telling about the internet or chat GPT or artificial intelligence. All of these have nothing to do with the time of that period. But it is a prophecy. And so the prophecies are shaped using the people, the names, the locations, the nations, the borders, the hills, the cities, and very much of that day. Now, that's how prophecies will be shaped up. Otherwise, it will be a very strange prophecy to them. So the prophecy as being expressed is against the land of Hadrach. Hadrach, uh, with Damascus as its resting place, appears to be at a time where they recognize it's no longer just the borders of Israel of the day. It appears to have expanded somewhat towards Syria. And it says here, it is a time that the eyes of humanity will be towards God. Now, the translation here is a bit problematic. There is no especially. It actually is the word and all the tribes of Israel. And so this continues on from the last verse of chapter 8, verse 23. We have the goyim plus the Jew. And in this case, we would find that this seems to highlight the time of Isaiah chapter 2. Isaiah chapter 2, and in verse 2 and 3. It is a time where the goyim looks towards God. Now, once we see this as the frame of the prophecy, right here, the frame of this prophecy will be the eyes of humanity, and all the tribes of Israel are toward Jehovah. And that would be sometime in the future, I would say, where the knowledge of God will be as waters that covers the sea. And then it expands to verse 2. It says, and Hamath, also the borders of it, and this is the northern part. In the northern part, we will find the existence of the then nations of Tyre, Sidon, and they are said to be very wise. Now, the idea of very wise talks about the fact that they are wealthy nations. They know how to do their business, and they are very successful. In verse 3, it says, Tyre herself built a fortress. Now, the idea here is the fortification, meaning they were able to build something that protects themselves. She piled up silver like dust, gold like the mud of the street. Now, based on this language that we have here, this is walled, well protected, and it talks about wealth, and wealth of such immense proportion. Now, how do we read this? It's like this. Silver and gold would be the precious metals that is used for trade. And it says here, they would heap up silver like dust. It's all over the place. And they will heap up gold like clay on the streets. You find that it is all over, and it's like overflowing. It's like a common commodity. It's all over that you can actually step on it. Now that's the picture. Now, whether Tyre, Sidon, and all these nations as being described here, at that time they do exist. They don't exist today. And I would imagine in this prophecy would be using those nations that is north and south of Israel to depict a future time where it would be at an environment where nations are so wealthy and so plentiful. And then verse 4 says, God will dispossess her. Now, this one reads Adonai. This word here, Lord, is Adonai. And Adonai refers to Jehovah. And this would be a time where God will be fighting on behalf of Israel. Now, in the concept of the Jews, you find that Ezekiel chapters 38 to 39, the war of Gog and Magog, is viewed as the final war, where a large number of very powerful nations will come after Israel. And in Ezekiel 30 and 39, which you can go back and read, it is believed by the Jews that they would see God defending Israel. And so this picture of verse 4 talks about how God will dispossess her, cast her wealth into the sea, and she will be consumed with fire. That God will send fire to consume her. See, all of this is divine. It is going to be supernatural. And so all the nations that are very rich will be dispossessed by God. Verse 5. Now you find that these would be the Philistines' cities. Ashkelon will see it and will be afraid because God had done the burning up or consuming Tyre with fire. Gaza will rise in great pain. These are all very poetic language. Ekron is another city of the Philistines. Her hope has been in ruin. The king will perish from Gaza, and Ashkelon will not be inhabited. So all of these are language of fear and turmoil. And looking at what God had done in that sense. So this is a prophecy of the future. And a people of mixed origin. Now, this one here is a bit more difficult to explain. This idea of mixed origins says that they will live in Ashdod because it's already uh, in these are the five cities of the Philistines, and God says, I will eliminate the pride of the Philistines. So all five of these cities will be destroyed. Now, this idea of mixed origins is a very difficult idea. This one talks about aliens. And it appears that if it is at the time of Isaiah chapter 2, you find that this would be the goyim that will be in Jerusalem and in this part of the occupancy. Now, that would be my speculation. So I'm just letting you know that this idea of mixed origins is seen that way, in my opinion. Verse 7. And then God says, I will remove their blood from their mouth and their detestable things from between their teeth. This is about mouth, and the teeth is in their mouth. This would be an A and a B. This is about destruction. Then they also will be a remnant for our God. Now, this whole idea speaks about a time where, how should we say, where they would actually be converted. They will be a remnant for our God, like a clan in Judah, and Ekron will be like a Jebusite. What does that mean? A Jebusite to Ekron, this is an enemy that has become one with Ekron. A clan in Judah uh, is viewed as I guess you can say that this would be a chief of Judah, not just a clan. And you see this as Jerusalem in to Judah, as Jebusite is to Ekron. That would be that at this point in time, I think what we can say is in verse 7, this idea of remnant is key, because this whole idea between chief in Judah and Jebusite to Ekron is hinged on this idea of a remnant, those who remain. And I guess you this is somewhat of a different. This would be the remnant for our God, and it would be a study hall. Now, this idea of a study hall uh, is some of a difficult word to translate. So let me just take one step back and just explain some of these words first. Then they will be like a remnant, those who are left over for God. There will be a small group of them left from the destruction, and these remnant will appear to be like an alone It used to be read as a chief. Some Jewish translation would view these as the places where chiefs or princes will meet. That's what it says here. And then Ekron will have a similar place. And so you'll find that a possible translation would be that Ekron will become another place where it is a meeting of learning. That's one way of looking at it. So I'm just sharing with you. It is a rather difficult verse to try to get our hands around it. A place to study. That would be one of the attempts to explain verse 7. But what we can be sure of is that there will be a certain destruction towards the 5 cities of the Philistines, and they'll be turned around to be places of study. And that's how we will read verses 5, 6, and 7. In verse 8, it is a continuation where the 5 cities of the Philistines have been destroyed by God. And it says here, God says, I will camp around my house because of an army, because of him who passes by and returns. And no oppressor will pass over them anymore, for now I have seen with my eyes. This is again a difficult verse to express. So it's the translation that now becomes a problem. My house, temple. So it will be a future time when the temple will exist. And this will be against, it will be against any army. And then it says here, and from any army who comes and goes. So we will retranslate this. This appears to be at a time of Ezekiel chapters 38 and 39. That God will fight that war. So it's a continuation. Remember, this whole chapter is one piece. That God will do 2 things: defend Israel and will attack the enemies. And the enemies will be in the form of armies where they come and fight. And so this would be how it can be understood, that God will defend Jerusalem and the temple, and by that will be defending Israel against any army, and from any army who comes and goes to the land. And as they come into Israel, God will attack these enemies. The next part here is this: no oppressor will pass through them or pass by them. Right? Pass over them or pass by them or pass through them anymore. For now I have seen with my eyes. Seen what? The suffering of Israel. So God has seen the suffering of Israel and God defends them. And so Ezekiel 30 and 39 is really a divine war. We now come to verse 9 and 10, because verse 9 and 10 is one portion. As God has destroyed the enemies and defended Israel, as pointing to Ezekiel 38 and 39, there is a exhortation to say, rejoice greatly, because at that point in time, there is victory over all the armies. So we have seen that in verse 7 and 8. And then it says here, rejoice greatly as in celebratory, daughters of Zion and daughter of Jerusalem. And so this idea of shout is in the same tone as the rejoicing. These are what we call victory cries, victory celebration, making noises. And in the tradition of the Jewish people, you find that all of these victory cries, the celebration, the making noises are all done by the women folk. And then the cries would be this, and this is part of that prophecy. It says, behold, your king is coming to you. Now, this word king is literally the ruler. And this, I think we should be looking at Ezekiel chapter 37. And this refers to the king who is a shepherd, who will rule over the house of Israel and the house of Judah. And this will become one nation. And so this is that king that is prophesied in Ezekiel 37. And it says here, he is just. This word is Zadik, he is just. And then he is victorious. I think this word here is Noshia. Now, this word endowed with salvation is a problematic translation. So we can say that he is either victorious, and it comes from the word he is being delivered. It literally shows us that this king was not fighting this war. This king was given the victory by God, right? By God. And that's the meaning for this particular word, victorious. He's victorious because he is delivered by God. Then the next phrase is also very difficult to explain. This word is humble. And in this sense of humble, he is demonstrated, right? This is a visible view of the king as somebody who is lowly, not coming on a horse. That's why it's seen as humble. And so he is riding on a donkey, not a horse. And here in this verse, we have some challenges, and let me just bring this out. A donkey, a colt, the foal of a donkey. And so let us read this. This is not, well, I said even, this would be and. And by saying this, you would find that we have this part here as an A, and this part here as a B. So they're talking about the same animal. This is how the Hebrew shows us. So we find the king, he is riding on, the first word here is a chamor. Chamor would mean a he-ass, meaning a male donkey. possibly by the idea of the color. The second idea here is the foal, the steed. This would be air, and this would be I guess you can call it a foal. A foal would be uh, a young ass. And the third word here is aton. And in an aton, this would be a she donkey. There are three words here that we need to actually be aware of. And so you find that the word donkey, and let me just point out to you, this word donkey is hamor. This word coat, I think the translation is having a problem. This would be a she donkey. So the coat in this case would be the air, and the she donkey would be the aton. So now we have three animals that is described in this verse. The king is not riding on a horse. The king is riding on a male donkey, right? It's the same animal, the male donkey. That's number one. It is the foal or a young donkey, a young ass, and it's a male. And so this word hamor and ayer would be an A and a B. And to describe the young foal, this is not a young animal of any particular animal, but it's a young animal of an aton, which is number three. It is a she donkey, a female donkey, an animal of burden. And based on this, we have to be very clear that the king himself is riding on a donkey, a male donkey for that matter, and a baby one. And it is a product of a female donkey. Now, I've noted verse 10, and verse 10 is a continuation. And the word here is and. This is a continuation. So verse 9 doesn't stand alone. Verse 9 and verse 10 is one sentence, like if you want to call it that way. It says, and I would be God. I will eliminate the chariot of Ephraim, the horse from Jerusalem. Now, this is another A and a B that we have to see. So God will eliminate the chariot and the horse. So now you notice the king does not ride a horse because the king is not in the fight. God is in the fight. And so here I will eliminate, I will karat, I will end. The idea of chariot would be a fighting, this is a fighting vehicle. The horse is a fighting animal. And you notice that we are talking about an A and a B. Ephraim represents the house of Israel, the northern side. Jerusalem will represent the house of Judah. And so we are now talking about this right here. The house of Israel, the house of Judah, where the king is going to be the shepherd of both houses, uniting them in one nation. And so it's explained here, Ephraim, Jerusalem, God is going to do the fighting. And so the king is clearly seen that he is taking a back seat. He is taking an observer's role. And he is coming in knowing that he did not participate in the fight, but he was given the victory by God. That is how verse 9 is also understood. Verse 10, the bow of war is eliminated. He will speak peace to the nations. His dominion will be from sea to sea and from the river to the ends of the earth. Now, here you find that this would be the king. You notice here, you have the king is the he. The he is the king. And so we would understand here that the king here would speak of the peace to the nations. Dominion will be from sea to sea, from the river to the ends of the earth. Now, this would be the boundaries of dominion. It is not the old Israel land. So that's why we can see this as future. It is an expanded boundaries. And then he will speak peace. Now, let's think with me a little bit. This idea of peace is shalom. And why is there peace to the nations here? Is so that they are not fighting. When there's no fighting, there is peace. And so when he says the bow of war will be eliminated, it means that there is no fighting instruments. And this will be Isaiah chapter 2, verse 4. And this is speaking about all the weapons, the knives, the spears are all turned into plowshares, to agricultural instruments. There will be peace because there will not be fighting. So understand, the idea of shalom comes from the concept of shalem, which is completion. At a time where there is no fighting, the environment would be complete. And the king will be the one that will bring peace to all the nations. Now, by nations, you need to understand this word is goyim. This would be all the non-Israel nations. So there will be a dominion and nobody would object. This will be a time of extensive peace. There will be no more fighting. People are just clamoring for learning more about God. So Isaiah chapter 2 is very interesting. It is a post Ezekiel chapter 38 and 39 situation. Let us try to finish this this chapter. In verse 10, it says here, this is a continuation. So let me just put up here Ezekiel 38 and 39 as the backdrop. As for you also, because of the blood of my covenant with you, I have set your prisoners free from the waterless pit. Now, this idea here, this is poetic language. God is setting them free from exile. So this would be how we would read this. Free from exile. Because of the covenant, you'll be free from exile. So verse 12 says, return to the stronghold, return to the fortress, right? Fortress. You prisoners who have the hope. And this is really speaking about Israel. And of course, in that case of Zechariah, it's Judah, but this would be Israel in the future. this very day I'm declaring that I will restore double to you. I will restore you again. That would be a better way of reading. So God is trying to tell them, go home. This may apply to the first return, or it may apply to the next return. So this part here is possibly the first return. And in the second instance, there will be a war. So let me just show the rest of the verses. In the next few verses is describing a different scenario. It's no longer going home. So it's no longer going home. It's no longer about the return. It is about the war. It says, for I, and this will be God, will bend Judah as my bow, and I will fill the bow with Ephraim. This is talking about a unity of the nation. This Judah represents the south, Ephraim represents the north. And I, God, will stir up your sons, Zion, against your sons, Greece. This in itself may represent Greece or the descendants of Greece. And this would be Gog and Magog, which is Ezekiel 38:39. And I will make you like a warrior's sword. And God is using the Israel nation like a sword to fight. Now, this is all poetic language. You can't make a nation like a sword. So God is saying, I am going to fight on your behalf and I will defend you. And this will be the entire nation. And then verse 14 says, and then God will appear over them. His arrow will go forth like lightning. The Lord will blow the shofar and march in the storm winds of the south. This is a poetic language of how God will fight. And notice all of this is about God's ability to attack. Right? God's ability to attack. This is shofar, by the way, and this is a cry, a war cry. In verse 15, it says, and then as God is fighting for them, always remember we are talking about Ezekiel 38 and 39. The Lord of armies will protect them, and they will devour and trample on the sling stones. They will drink and be boisterous with wine. They will be filled like a basin, like the corners of the altar. Now, this is a bit difficult to translate, and let me attempt to translate this. God is going to protect them. How? We have seen this word, they. They would be Judah and Ephraim. That would be in verse 14. And so these three would be an A, B, and C. This is how they will demolish the enemies. And it's seen as God demolishing, and now it's come back into a more personal level, that the two kingdoms, north and south, will be the ones that is going to be, how would you say, wiping out all these armies. And it seems that they are going to be drunk, right? Be boisterous is about being drunk. This is being drunk. drunken, as though with wine. They are going to be completely filled to the basin, and this is with blood. We're talking about the corners of the altar where you smear the horns of the altar. The idea of these corners is projected as horns. And this would be an offering to God. Verse 16, this would be, and God will save them on that day. So every time you see on that day, it is the future. And we're talking about the Ezekiel 38 and 39 war. God will save them. Again, them would be Judah and Ephraim. This idea of save literally means liberate, deliver. And God looks at his people like a flock. This idea of flock would be like flock of small animals. They are like helpless. And God says they are stones of a crown, sparkling on his land. So this gives us a victorious, valuable imagery of Judah and Ephraim. It will be stones on the crown of God, sparkling in his hand, and these will be precious stones. For how great, right? How great is their, the word loveliness is goodness. The second word here is how great is their beauty. Grain or corn in this case, corn will make the young men flourish. Now, the idea of flourish, I think we'll call this increase, right? Increase. And this can be understood as an increase in, I guess, how goodly, how that's increase in how, in being perceived, I guess you could say that, in how it's being perceived. So both of this, young men and young women, in this case, the young women here is noted as virgins, unmarried young women. And they will be seen, and this is the perception of the day, that they will flourish, and they will flourish like wine as well. And they will speak with wine. And so there'll be lots to talk about. This is the imagery that is being painted, and this would be the end of the war. Now, we have kind of struggled through a number of these verses, mainly because the Hebrew itself is not that easy to translate, and a number of the translators' choice of words may not be the most suitable. But I hope that you could see how this entire chapter 9 flows from the start to the finish with regards to the future prophecy or things that will happen at a time when God will defend Israel from a future war of armies coming in and out of the nation and the land. And so much of what is written here is in some poetic language, which requires us to understand a little bit of the imagery. It is not impossible to understand, but there are parts and bits and pieces that will require a little bit more detailed study, I would say. And so it is not as straightforward as we would have wanted it, and I've tried to show you as plainly as I possibly can. And so with this, we come to the end of chapter 9 today.